Hi there, my name's Dr. Gemma Stacey. I'm Director of Academy at the Florence Nightingale Foundation. This short presentation has the aim of demystifying writing for publication for those of you who are either novice or writers or disillusioned by the writing process. A bit about me before we begin. If you were to look me up online, you would see my public CV. You'd see that I've been an associate professor at the University of Nottingham. I write a lot. I've got about 50 plus publications. I peer review for lots of journals, sit on scientific review panels for conferences and also organising committees as well. And I have experience as an editor of a journal, both Nurse Education in Practice and the International Practice Development Journal. What you won't see is what I call my shadow CV. Which actually would say that I'm dyslexic, so I find writing really challenging, time consuming. It's definitely not something that comes easy to me. Because of my dyslexia, I always feel very anxious about sharing my writing before it's been proofread by others. If there's a situation where we have to brainstorm on flip charts, I will avoid it at all costs. For fear of being exposed as somebody that can't spell very well. And actually myself, even though I've edited and peer reviewed many times, I still receive rejections when I submit papers to peer review journals. There's definitely no magic formula to this, and it doesn't come easy to anyone, I don't think, but everyone has their individual challenges. So my hope by the end of this session is that I can encourage you to clarify your motivation for wanting to write for publication, to have thought about your preferred approach and how you might integrate that into your working pattern, to start to think about a working title and where you might want to publish, and also to reframe the whole process and point of peer review. And finally, just to address and explore some of the barriers and setbacks that you might experience in writing for publication and how you might be able to preempt those. Okay, so first question, what is your motivation to write? So in my experience of supporting academics and clinicians to write for publication, it rarely happens if their only motivation to write is about the development of their CV. There's always something that will take priority over their own professional development. So what I would encourage you to think about now is there a key message that you feel particularly passionate about getting out into the public domain? So this might be about some innovative practice that you've been involved in. It may be about a personal experience of delivering or experiencing care. There could be all sorts of motivations, but it's really important to think, well, what are the things that I really want the wider world to hear about? And once you've made that decision, have a think about who your target group is. So who do you want to hear this message? Is it other people practicing in similar areas to you? Is it policymakers? Is it the general public? And what do you hope to achieve by that? What is your desired outcome? So do you want to influence and change practice as a result of it? Do you want to improve standards of care? Do you want to develop your own reputation in a particular area of clinical practice or research? So identifying for you what is your the outcome that you hope to achieve. And when you put all these three things together, that then makes you think, actually, this is something that I am motivated to prioritise within my working week. Next question. Where will you publish and in what form? So there are lots of options here, and I'm going to take you through just a couple and think about the pros and cons of each of them. So that idea about what it is and where and what impact you want it to have will really inform your decision here about what is the best avenue. But the most common and probably most widely known is the peer review journal publication. And there are great benefits to that. It has an impact amongst an academic audience. So typically those that work within universities and students will have access to your publication as a result of of publishing within a peer review journal. It's seen as a really credible place to publish your work because it's been through that peer review process, and so it's a rigorous quality monitoring process, which means that your work is seen as of a high standard. The whole process itself is a developmental process, but also it's seen as a good indicator of the quality of the work that you do. So it can help you to progress in your working world, particularly if you do have an academic element to your role. You may be able, as a result of publishing in peer review, to contribute to what we call the research assessment exercise. So this is how universities are judged on the quality of their work and the impact that it has, and that's something that's very sought after for those of you that do have that motivation. But I think probably one of the most important things is that peer review publications are publicised to an international network and can often result in collaborations with people all over the world that are doing similar work to you. Okay, where will you publish in what form? Another example is more practice-based journals. These are journals that are more of a magazine type format. They have impact in practice amongst clinicians. They could be around developing continuing professional development. They can be reflective pieces or they can be debate pieces. So there's more flexibility to the type of paper that can be published in practice-based journals. Again, it demonstrates your professional development and can contribute to your progress, particularly if you're a clinician. It again can contribute to the knowledge exchange assessment exercise. So how is the knowledge that you're generating practice impacting in the wider world? And has that opportunity again to lead to national collaborations. Usually these kinds of journals don't reach an international audience, but that can happen. But you're far more likely to be connecting with other clinicians and academics as well. So another example of how you might want to disseminate your work and think about publication is through a conference presentation. So conferences are very credible ways of disseminating your work. You would do this by identifying a conference that is related to your particular area of expertise and interest, and submitting what we call an abstract. And the abstract is really a summary of your work. The different conferences will have different requirements for what information they want within the abstract, how many words it is and what the particular structure should be. So you should definitely identify the conference you want to go to and really follow the guidelines that they give you for your abstract submission. It's a really credible way of disseminating your work because it goes through a similar process to peer review journal, where all of the abstracts that are submitted are peer reviewed, usually by 2 people, and that will be anonymous, and they'll score it. And then what we call a scientific review committee will look at all of those scores and identify which abstracts should contribute to the conference, and that's based on the quality of the abstract that you've submitted. So it's something definitely that you should spend some time on putting together, and make sure that you put across your key messages in a really clear way. The great thing about conferences is that you have identified that conference because it's focused on something that is of an area of interest to you. So the audience that you are accessing have a shared interest. It's a very targeted approach of disseminating your work with other people that are either from a similar field or background, and they will attend your particular presentation because they are motivated to want to hear more about it. So it is a really excellent way to start to develop your networks, and I would say that conferences are where I've developed the initial relationships that have led to the most exciting collaborations, and that can be national depending on the nature of the conference, but also international as well. So the networking opportunities that present from attending conferences in many ways outweigh the actual presentation itself. But the great thing about conferences is there are lots of different ways that you can present your work. So if you are new to conferences, it may be that you want to do a poster presentation. And again, these take different forms at different conferences. Sometimes there are poster sessions where people display their posters and people can walk around and you stand by them and answer their questions or have conversations about your work. Other conferences have specific short presentations that go alongside the posters, usually about 5 minutes or so. So it just depends really on the different formats of the conference. But a poster is a really good way of summarising your work and getting it out there to the whole of the conference audience. Presentations, sometimes called concurrent sessions, are usually 15-20 minute presentations. They'll usually be within a theme, so the conference organisers will have linked your work to other work within a similar area, maybe digital health, maybe service user and carer involvement. Those kinds of things would be the types of themes that you might identify. And this is really an opportunity to get across the key messages from your work and the implications for future work, and opportunities for collaboration and networking as well. If your particular work is about a practice development area or an educational development area, and you think it would be of value to other people attending the conference to experience some of that work, then you may want to submit an abstract for a workshop, and that would take usually they're a bit longer, 45 minutes to an hour. They'll have specific learning objectives around a particular topic. So I've done workshops before on writing for publication. I've done them before about using digital media in education. So those kinds of things are the types of things you can do workshops on. And then lastly, the other form of presentation is what they call symposium. And these are a group of presentations that are all based around the same topic. So it may be you've had a programme of work that's been done in a similar area, and then symposium will present maybe initially the systematic literature review that you did around that work, and then some of the packages and outputs that have come along the way. Or they could be looking at a particular topic from different perspectives and standpoints. Lots of different ways that symposium are presented, but generally you would have a collection of different presentations and a number of people would present within that work, and usually something at the beginning and the end that ties it all together. Now, conferences, I would say, are an excellent way of demonstrating your professional development. They're certainly positive for your CV and will definitely be taken into consideration if you're thinking about progressing through promotions and those types of things. And finally, please don't underestimate the power of social media as an avenue to publish your work through blogs or through various different Twitter, different forums such as that. This is about accessible and rapid information sharing. It is accessed by an undefined audience, so public, professional audience. It can still be counted as professional development and progress indicator because you can demonstrate the wide impact and reach of the work that you've done, and it absolutely can lead to collaborations with varied and international networks. For me, I've written a lot in peer review journal publications, but it's actually some of the blogs that I've written for the independent and charity sector that have led to some really exciting and creative collaborations and far more awareness of the work that I've been involved in. So don't underestimate that avenue. Next question, what is your preferred approach to writing? So I've put some question here to encourage you to think that through. Are you somebody that likes to snack? So can you do a little bit throughout the day, or maybe an hour in the morning before you move into your main role and job? Or do you prefer to feast? Are you somebody that needs to block out a couple of days to really immerse yourself in that writing mindset? Either one is fine, but it's important to think about how you can work that into your working week. Can you multitask? So are you somebody that can have the emails open alongside writing, or do you need complete concentration when you're in that zone? For some people, it's important that they do have 100% focus. So if that is the case, it's important to think about how you can limit the distractions of the other things that can take your mind away or your thought processes in a different direction. Are you somebody that finds procrastination a trouble or a challenge? So there are loads of jobs that can be done before we sit down and write for publication. It's one of the things that often feels the most daunting, and so we'll find many other useful things, including the washing and the ironing, even before we can sit down. So it's important to think about how you can minimise the impact of those distractions. Are you somebody that prefers to work alone, or are you somebody that works well in groups? I think writing as a collective group can be really helpful. You hold each other to account and you feel a sense of responsibility to each other. So even if you do write your contribution on your own, knowing that other people are expecting that contribution and you're working together to achieve something can be helpful. Thinking about your working environment, is it something that you can do in your workplace, or do you need to be working at home? What is the best setup and circumstance? Is it a desk? Is it sometimes people open their laptop when they're in bed in the morning and find themselves still there 3 hours later, having done some really productive work? So have a think about what your environment needs to look like for you to be your most productive. And finally, how will you access what I call your affiliative emotional system? So the place you are where the stresses of day-to-day life are put to one side and you feel in that very calm and soothed place where your mind can start to think about the bigger picture, start to explore things, more complex issues, and start to do some of that creative thinking that when we're in that stressed out and rushed adrenaline pumping mindset, we just can't seem to access. Okay, another question. How do you keep your critical voice in check? So many people, including myself, have said these kinds of things to me. There's no point in me writing for publication. I don't have anything new to write about. Everything that I do has already been said before. But you would be amazed about how what you consider the normal is actually incredibly innovative, and also how your personal perspective on that particular topic or issue is unique in itself and has a lot to contribute. So don't underestimate how novel the work is that you are undertaking. Even though it's your day-to-day, for many people it will be completely mind-blowing and fascinating. People worry about the external criticism and the fact that if you submit a paper, it may well get rejected initially. And unfortunately, that is part of this process. And we'll move on to that in just a moment as to how to manage that peer review process and to think more positively about what that offers to you. The time factor is a huge issue, and it's a real issue, especially for those of us that are in clinical practice. And so that question about how to fit writing into your day-to-day is a really important one. So this idea of snacking and feasting, it may be unrealistic to think that you can block out a full 2 days to concentrate on writing. So it may be that you have to think about chunks of the day, maybe early in the morning, if that's your most productive time. So experiment with different ways of fitting it into your day-to-day and routine practice. I was always previously somebody that liked to protect big chunks of time, but that's not realistic for me now. So I've gotten into a new habit now where I chip away at things and do small paragraphs or read articles, and all in contribution to a time when I do actually have a decent amount of time. And then this idea of an academic writing style. So there is definitely a way of writing peer review publications and blog posts. They have a convention, they have expectations attached to them. My biggest advice in that area is to read other examples and start to mimic some of that language, some of the structure and the types of words that are used to describe particular approaches, those kinds of things. So it's from engaging in lots of peer review and offering critique to others that I feel like I've developed my own academic writing style. So I said about this idea of what does peer review expose you to in terms of that criticism and rejection. So here's a few tips from me. If you can reframe peer review as an opportunity for development, it means something completely different. What I would advise you to do is to engage in a whole process of peer review before you actually submit the paper to the formal process. So identify somebody who can be your writing buddy, so somebody that you really trust, that will give you some honest feedback on the clarity, the relevance, the focus of your work. If it's me, to check to see if there are major spelling errors, grammar areas, those kinds of things. So somebody that you would consider somebody that you would really respect and value their opinion, and you can offer that back to them as well, so that can be a reciprocal relationship. Also identify somebody who can be your writing mentor. So this might be somebody who's a real expert in a field that you're looking into, or somebody who has lots of experience of writing for publication and will be able to give you a bit more of those tricks of the trade that I'm talking to you about now, but specifically in relation to your particular topic. And also ask somebody from your target audience to provide you with some feedback. So is that message that you feel motivated to get out there coming through in the work that you're having, and will it have that potential influence and impact that you're hoping it to? My other top tips is around preempting the formal peer reviewer comments. So as an editor, what I notice is the same comments coming up over and over again, and these are things that you can preempt and do before you actually submit. So making sure that you are using recent literature in your background and your discussion. So is it the most up-to-date evidence and policy that's relevant to your topic that you're citing? Clearly stating what your paper actually adds to the knowledge base. So what is novel, what is innovative about this piece of work, what difference will it make, and how will it develop the knowledge base in the area? If you are going for an international publication, think about the international relevance. Make sure you give a good description of the local context so an international audience could understand the transferability to their context. And always think about your ethical considerations. So even if ethical approval isn't needed to conduct the piece of work that you're undertaking, perhaps it's a service evaluation, think about what are the ethical implications of that and make sure that you make reference to that and a statement around it. So the key message here: treat the peer review process as an opportunity for your development rather than as a personal criticism. It's really, really important that you see this as an opportunity to get feedback from experts in your field. It's a quality improvement process. You will develop your writing as a result of it. And it might, for me, it's often something that I need to read through at first, feel that personal criticism, put it to one side, and then go back to it when I've got a more logical and objective mindset around it. Okay, points to remember about this process. If you are rejected, it may well be that the paper that you've submitted is not within scope for the journal, so make sure that you really do pick the right place for your paper to go. And use the feedback that they send you and submit it elsewhere. It doesn't mean that it's not a valid piece of work, it just means that that particular journal are not at that time wanting to publish it. Take into consideration that peer review does take a long time. It takes a long time to identify the peer reviewers, for them to accept, and then obviously they get 3 weeks usually to provide their peer review. So don't worry if you submit your paper and you don't hear anything for a while. Actually, what that usually means is it has gotten to the peer review process and it's in the system. Think about that peer review as a critical perspective on your piece of work. So they have been asked to provide criticism. So it will be about development. It won't be necessarily about the positives of the paper. So that's what they've been purposefully asked for. And as an editor, if I don't get that critical feedback, I will ask for another reviewer so that I ensure that that is provided. You always have the opportunity to respond to peer review comments, and even if you don't agree with them, you should address them. So you should justify why you have not responded to that within your paper, and do that with courtesy and respectfully as well. And also, when you are addressing their feedback, be really transparent and detailed about how you've done that. We want to make it as easy as possible for them to say, yes, this person has listened, and their paper is developed based on my feedback. Okay, so finally, what we've talked about today has given you some top tips and some things to think about. So what I would encourage you to do now as a bit of homework from this, start to think about the what's. What is your working title? What is the key message that you want to get out there? Where? What's the most appropriate place for you to publish, and who is going to be your target audience? The when, how are you going to fit writing into your very busy schedule? In what way will this become part of your routine practice? And the who are you going to have around you to hold you to account, to support you, and to facilitate your writing process? Identify who could be your buddy and who could be your mentor. So just to say, I'm very happy to support you in your writing journey. Please do keep in touch. My email address is here. You'll find me on the Florence Nightingale Foundation website. And good luck with your writing endeavours. As I said at the start, this is not something that comes easy to any of us. It's about persistence, and it's about that real motivation and desire to get those important messages out there into the wider public and practice domain. Good luck. Thank you.